Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with the actual kind of build video for the Cumstorm build. And I wasn't too positive about it last time around, just it was more of a concept, but I have put some work into it, and it has kind of turned into a pretty serious build. It is unfortunate that it took a bit of investment, so my sword is fairly, solid, and then I had to get a level 4 in power, and that's pretty much it though. It's pretty much just that. The rest of the gear isn't too expensive. It's all pretty basic stuff that you just need for this type of Omni build, which is some stats, and for the most part, pretty much it's stuff that's going to be all out there on the lower end. If you want the really high-end stat stacking gear, then it's going to cost a premium, or you have to try and make it yourself and get a little bit lucky. But as far as I can tell, Omniscience, the Amulet, extremely busted. It even makes a concept such as this one, which shouldn't really work because cast on crit Exsanguinate off of Cyclone, just as the only skill, is pretty mediocre as an idea. It shouldn't be particularly good, and yet here we are. The build in the end can rock at the high end, 15 million DPS, and some of the boss kills did go down pretty damn well. It did end up kind of being sort of a little bit similar to the Scion for cast on crit that I did as a bow character, and it's just basically a Cyclone version but without any Eternity Shroud stacking, and I think that's going to be a better build either way. So if you want a better cast on crit, probably look at the Scion bow version, and maybe you can do it with Omni instead as well if you'd really rather. But just having the ability to be at massive amounts of range is extremely valuable, whereas Cyclone, it's smooth through mapping and it is smooth through certain content, but when push comes to shove, you don't really particularly want to be spinning directly on top of bosses in the 4-ways, 5-ways, etc. Haven't done that much endgame content yet though. It's been a very, very smooth mapper at this point. And you can see that the chains on the Exsanguinate are actually pretty damn potent and satisfying. So it feels very similar to a Mjolnir arc sort of cast on crit build, but I think the having Awakened Chain attached to Exsanguinate just makes for a much better, cleaner arc or chaining across very large packs of enemies. It feels extremely potent when we're talking about huge packs of enemies, because you just need 1 or 2 good crits and it's going to blast the entire pack away. So chain attached to Exsanguinate, and in this case Awakened Chain, I allowed myself that use because it was like 1 or 2x. Definitely feels really good for clear. We do have to get rid of the chain when we're going into boss fights because it's a pretty big less multiplier, but there's not too many things we can do there, so I ended up having to get skitterbots into my setup so that I can chill things, so that I can use hypothermia. But for the most part, with chain on, I'm at like 11 million DPS and don't have to swap into single target almost ever. So it's been a very quick like level 93, and might push for 94 or 95 and do some end game still on the character, but it's been a pretty successful run of a cast on crit Exsanguinate, and I do think it's largely because the Omniscience Amulet is just rather overpowered. And I explained how that worked in the previous video if you're a bit confused about it. At this stage my character has 18 or 1900 Omniscience, I think it is, so you can imagine 180 Ellie Pen is pretty damn strong. And this is a 4-way Shaper Guardian all at once fight. Thought I'd give that a shot. This single target is decent on a small scale, so a 1-on-1, but once you start getting into more and more of them, it's definitely, you start to notice that your Cyclone, similar to the character I just then played, Blade Vortex, you're extremely melee, and to get your damage in, you have to be right in the thick of the action. So a lot of the time, when you're doing these larger boss fights, the 4-ways and the 5-ways, you just don't get the opportunity to attack that often. So against a Maven, for example, pretty clean deeps and Cumstorming all over the place, and it felt pretty good. Pretty good. So the DPS there on the high roll is about 15 million. That is with the focus up and fixing the proc rate to make sure that you're not going over a certain attack speed threshold, so that you're still proccing at maximum amounts of cast on crit. So the other thing this is basically served to do is show that cast on crit really isn't dead. It's absolutely alive, and there's many different variants for you to still play. Even the Cospris and the Mjolnirs, after the slight nerfs, are definitely going to be highly playable. So, you know, by all means, keep your eyes peeled on those. I'm still probably going to be doing a bunch more self-casting, because self-casting is what was buffed and what is more viable than it was, so I might still be doing more of that, but I'll allow myself 1 or 2 cast on crit builds. This one was a bit of a meme, but we managed to turn it around and still make something of it. So I'll just log in real quick and show you what the character's built like at the moment, since it is basically a full build. So once again, the character is a Scion, level 93 at this point, Borba Spin, Comet Storm. It has taken a few revamps to, or bunch of mapping to truly think how I can do this and get it to its actual workable stage, and a lot of that has ended up coming through just a Comb's Heart, because it has been tough for me to fill out the life on the build to a point where I'm not just taking damage all of the time and dying, given that it's Cyclone and I'm not freezing or shattering stuff. So I've had to get a bunch of defense into the build and, you know, get it into a stage where it can take plenty of hits. So we are using a Comb's Heart, and I have built into Determination and Defiance Banner. So with all the flasks up as well, which is quite a lot of the time, we are rocking something like 20k armor and ultimately can take a bunch of hits. But at the moment, you know, just standing in town, not too much. So otherwise, I don't think there's too much special going on, just a bunch of stats in various places. Still the same sword, I did put crit and stats onto it instead. Level 21 Exsanguinate, so the qualities don't matter at all, just nice cheap, like 10C level 21 Exsanguinate. And Empower level 4, which is kind of expensive, and it's probably only really worth using if you've got the same sword as me, so a +1. If it's not a +1 in the gems, then level 4 Empower is still okay, but it's not that necessary. And a level 3 definitely won't really do it. We then have crit damage, which can be crit strikes if you're really lacking on crit for a while. Absolutely use crit strikes instead. And then Cyclone, Awaken Added Fire level 5, and Awaken Chain, which really doesn't feel super necessary, but it does make your huge explosions of packs a little bit nicer. We then got the Black Sun Crest, so I just picked up a crappy one and defined it a few times till we got a good result. Once again, all of those percents turn into Omniscience, so 15% twice and then 11%. That's pretty damn good. And the amulet itself, I anointed Depth Perception because I did need some extra accuracy, but I actually ended up fixing all of my accuracy by becoming the Jug Ascendancy. So to begin with, I was Zerker, but that really doesn't do enough, and the Rage was actually hurting my attack speed breakpoints, so I went Jug, got the accuracy, get some endurance charges, immune to stun and chill, so very nice stuff there, and then the extremely cheap Chieftain Ascendancy is what we sniped for our secondary Ascendancy there. So I think these are like fucking 20C a piece or something. They're not particularly loved by anyone. And then still got the Raider for all the movement, onslaught, frenzy, that sort of shit. Otherwise, the passive tree looks something like this at the moment. Just a little detour to the Chieftain to pick up the fire stuff. You don't even have to be fire if you unspec from that and take the Fizz nodes over here, Fizz is cold over here, and then get some cold conversion, and then you're not Avatar of Fire anymore. That will add a bunch of defense during your map clear by all means. You'll gain a lot of freezing, shattering, that sort of stuff, and you'll lose like, I don't know, fucking 5 to maybe 10% of your damage. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just that you're no longer maximizing your usage of Covered in Ash and just pure fire scaling. So you can still do that by all means, but I went this full fire route. And honestly, it's probably a better idea to go shattering if you're going to do something like this. Then picked up a Cluster Jewel just to get Cremator, basically entirely for Cremator, because we wanted that explode or ignite enemies destroyed on kill, that sort of thing. Smoking Remains over here, and then just some whatever jewels. There aren't that many good jewels for pure Fizz type of spells, so you can get crit multi, global crit multi spells, and then since we're fully converted, fire damage, so but they're very quite mediocre ultimately. And then one little crit medium cluster, which gives just some crit, savage hit, crit, multi, and pressure points. And then grabbed something that's actually a little bit worse than these types, than just pure regular jewels. The Abyssal Jewel with a bunch of fizz and fire. Even a really good one, it ends up being about the same as just a whatever normal one of these, but I picked it up. It was fairly cheap. And then I divined a bunch of lethal prides to go either here or here. If you get some good stuff here, you can take more. If you get some good stuff here, you can take more stuff. But ultimately what we're looking for is % increased strength. So that's increased Omni. Flat Omni. So that's, we've got some melee crit chance there. 20 strength. So that's another 20 Omni right there. 5%. This one's just another melee crit. And then my depth perception is 5% double damage. So I took that for a bit of extra crit and accuracy. So you're looking for something like that, double damage, % strength, and then also each of these little nodes give an extra bonus to strength. So in the end, you can see that this one right here, 1866, is worth 200 Omni for me. So if you grab a Lethal Pride and check when you're divining in both of these spots, you should be able to find some good things happening. Then also for my sustain, which ended up being pretty necessary. The Vitality Watches didn't do much here, but you will notice that on single target, your sustain kinda sucks because you are just constantly chaining these Exsanguinates that do damage to yourself. As you can see, Exsanguinate costs 190 life, and you're proccing like 7 of those a second or some shit. Make sure you've got Leech on your gloves to try and counteract that. Otherwise, the Flask and Vitality Watches helps a little bit. It's not huge, but it does help a little. So yeah, the gloves themselves, just a bunch of accuracy, bit of conversion, and some strength on that, and some Chaos Res. With Unnerve, of course. Picked up this ring for some recoup. Doesn't really do much. I don't think it works for the Exsanguinate cost, because it's just a cost as opposed to a damage to yourself, but just a bunch of stats and recoup. It seemed pretty cheap, so I thought I'd buy it. And then made this one just by getting a fractured base and using essences until I got some good shit to happen. You can also use fundamental fossils, which is just a bunch of attribute fossils. And then spammed some dex essences into a Stygian until we got another strength roll, and it was pretty damn important to get this cooldown recovery crafted and make sure you're following your POB to see what sort of rate you need, because without this cooldown recovery rate, my proc rate was really bad. You needed that extra little bit. You got to make sure that you're hitting a certain threshold with your attack speed and your recovery rate and all that. And I maybe also Brutal Ground. That's the last thing I need to mention here. I'll also actually quickly show you what I'm talking about in POB, because if you, like, I was having a problem of too much attack speed or not enough cooldown recovery rate. You can see that just taking the belt off, for example, with no cooldown recovery rate, takes me down to 7 million DPS from 15 down to 7. So it cuts it in half, because it essentially cuts my proc rate in half, because it's no longer under the threshold of where I need to be for my attack speed to my proc rate. As you can see, trigger rate 7 a second, and then it goes down to 4 a second. And then at that point, I have to just fix it, attack speed, to be completely different, or just get a little bit of cooldown recovery. So keep an eye on that in all of your cast on crit builds. It's very important to be hitting the right procs for your skill, attack speed, cooldown recovery, all of that. But that's it. So yep, that's the build. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and the Cum Storm. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.